Hello, and welcome back to the channel. It's your public health safe space. Now, today the weather has dipped a little bit. We were enjoying it warm. It's gotten a little chilly, but we're still outside because there's much to talk about. So we're going to get started with no delay. Thank you so much for being here. Remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. We're going to have meaningful conversation in your public health safe space. Let's get going. There is a quiet shift happening in our communities. Not loud enough to dominate headlines every day, but powerful enough to reshape an entire generation. Young people are hurting, and not always in ways we immediately recognize. What we're seeing now, the anger, the violence, the withdrawal, the depression, is not random. It is a signal that something deeper is happening beneath the surface of childhood, adolescence, and young adulthood in America. Today, we ask a difficult question. Are we witnessing a youth mental health crisis created by society itself? 10 years ago, around 2015, let's say, about 1 in 10 adolescents experienced major depression. Today, that number has climbed to nearly 1 in 5. Among high school students, nearly 40% report persistent sadness or hopelessness. Suicide rates have increased by nearly 20% in a decade. Can you imagine? And among young adults, 1 in 3 now report mental health struggles. This is not a small shift. This is a public health emergency. But numbers alone don't tell a full story, because behind every statistic is an actual child who needs help. This child is trying to make sense of a world that often feels unstable, unsafe, and overwhelming. The data shows that mental health struggles are not evenly distributed. Most vulnerable age groups are from the ranging between ages, we'll start with ages 12 to 17. We call this group adolescents. There's a sharp rise in depression and anxiety, increased exposure to bullying, social pressure, and identity stress. From young adults, that group is 18 to 25. The highest rates of mental health conditions overall exist here, with increased suicide risk, financial stress, identity instability, and transition into adulthood, which can be difficult. The critical insight here is that early adolescence, that's middle and high school years, is where many symptoms first appear. If missed here, they often intensify into early adulthood. Now you might say, what's driving this? There is no single cause, but 4 powerful forces are shaping this crisis, and we'll take a look at them. First, we have socioeconomic instability. Financial stress in households exist here, housing insecurity, lack of access to consistent care, and finally, under this category, children absorb stress even when it's unspoken. The second point to consider is unaddressed trauma. Bullying, violence exposure, and family instability all exist under this category. When trauma is not processed, it doesn't disappear. It transforms, sometimes into depression, sometimes into anger, and sometimes into violence. Our third point to consider here is lack of mental health access. Even today, more than half of youth with depression receive no treatment. That means millions of children are navigating emotional distress without guidance, without therapy, and without support. Our final point there is social and cultural pressures. Social media comparison exists here. Isolation despite constant connectivity, academic and identity pressures. Young people are more connected than ever. Yes, they are. Yet, often more alone than ever. The most dangerous part of this crisis are the signs that are often visible but misunderstood. Now, we're going to deal with the warning signs parents and schools must watch for. At home, signs to watch for include sudden withdrawal from family or friends, persistent sadness, irritability, or anger, changes in sleep, whether too much or too little, loss of interest in activities they once loved, talking about feeling hopeless or worthless. We should pay attention to that, because sometimes they'll mutter a few things and we'll dismiss them. Please don't dismiss it. Increased aggression or defiance and self-harm behaviors are concerning statements that we should pay attention to. Now, when we get to the school, we want to report these warning signs. Schools are increasingly seeing bullying behavior or becoming a victim of bullying. Yes, you can be a victim of bullying, and that enhances this crisis that we're talking about. Frequent disciplinary issues is another. Declining academic performance, absenteeism, or avoidance of school. And finally, social isolation. And we notice that the isolating part of it comes up in many issues and in many segments of this conversation. Now, verbal expressions of anger, frustration, or hopelessness. The important thing to note here is a child acting out is often a child struggling internally, which is very important to note. Aggression is not always just behavior. It can be unprocessed pain. So sometimes when these children are acting out, it's that they have internalized pain themselves. Now, there is another point is when anger turns into harm. Now, we have youth on youth violence does not emerge just on isolation or in isolation. It often follows a pattern: emotional distress, lack of support, escalation into anger, or behavioral expressions of anger. If intervention does not occur early, the cycle can continue, sometimes with devastating consequences. Recognizing the signs is only the first step. The next question is, where do you go for help? Start with the school system. Most schools offer school counselors, psychologists, behavioral intervention programs, anti-bullying support systems, and individualized education programs. And there's another video dedicated to the IEP, and I want you to go back and look at that video if you have an IEP interest. Parents should request a meeting with the school and staff. That's very important to request these meetings. Ask for mental health evaluation. Document behavioral changes. Now, there's also healthcare and mental health providers. Pediatricians are the first point of screening. Licensed therapists or psychologists, community mental health clinics. Many areas offer low or sliding scale services. Then there is the government and national resources. We have things like Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, Treatment Locator, where you find local mental health services, 988, which is a suicide and crisis lifeline, and you could call or text 988. And immediate support for emotional distress or crisis can also be found. You could link with the National Alliance on Mental Illness, education, family support groups, and local chapters. The CDC also encourages the youth mental health data and prevention resources that are available through their site. Finally, we're going to look at the community-based support. Now, when we talk about community-based support, we're talking about faith-based organization, youth mentoring programs, after-school programs focused on emotional development. This is not just a youth issue. This is a societal reflection, because when children are overwhelmed, it is often a reflection of the environments around them. The rise in depression, the rise in violence, the silence around trauma. These are not isolated problems. And that's important, because a lot of times we say, oh, this is just a one-off, and we ignore it. We don't need to do that. They are connected. And the solution is not just awareness, it is action. Early intervention, accessible care, open conversations are important, because when we listen early, we prevent later. And when we invest in the mental health of our youth, we are investing in the future of our society. Thank you so much for joining me. This was an important topic. As brief as it was, we got to the point, no fluffing. And I want you to talk to me in the comment section. Let me know if you need resources, because they are there, they're available. And I want you to ensure that you advocate for yourself, for the children around you. Have a wonderful day. We'll see you on the next topic.